Welcome back to Thompson to Clark. Brad and I are here after what I would call a very disappointing week in San Francisco Giants baseball. Though I feel like when we talked about this last week, we were very guarded. We kind of had a feeling that the Braves were the better team for sure.
Yeah.
But I think our hope was like, hey, can we split at home? We are a pretty good home team. And the Braves have had lots of struggles with injuries. We read Samantha's comments from last week as well. And they this is not to say that they did not play these guys close, because the two of those games, the first two games that they lost, were both decided by one run. And were they both were extra innings, right?
Yeah, they were both extra innings. Yeah.
So you're playing right there with those guys. But as is often the problem with the Giants, is when they need a big hit, they just cannot get it. And ultimately that leads to what we saw all weekend, which was one game. I thought, maybe they hit the baseball halfway decently. In the games starting from last Monday, the Giants scored 0-3-2-6-0-4 in 6 baseball games. So that is 15. So that is 2.5 runs a game or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, because if they had only scored, I don't know, an average of 4 or 4.5 runs, then they probably only lose 2 games maximum. And we're talking about a very happy last week in Giants baseball.
Yeah, and the thing is, we always, we kind of knock on Farhan's comment of the best rotation in baseball. I mean, it's honestly not that far off. I ran numbers earlier because I thought, I kind of want to see, since the comment was made, was there like a big, drop off or this or that? Not really. I mean, the Giants, and we can get on the numbers later, but they're basically like the 10th best rotation in baseball. Since those comments were made, that was July 31st, the day of the trade deadline. They're not the best rotation in baseball, but if you're a top 10 rotation and you have a serviceable offense, there's 12 playoff teams. So, I mean, you've got a pretty good chance of getting in, and you've got a pretty good chance of making a pretty awesome run too, if you're a top 10 rotation in baseball. The problem is the offense the last 2 weeks has been, I don't even know if I'd say historically bad, but I mean, they're bad. And I ran those numbers too, because I thought, I know the offense is holding back this pitching staff. And then you have those 2 games, like you said, that they lost in extras. The first 2 games, Blake Snell, was dealing in game 1, and then just nothing to show for it. I don't know. I mean, we were raving about the extra innings ghost runner when it first started, because I thought, this is going to end some games. This is going to get us to bed early. It honestly, it hurts the home team. I don't know. And again, I didn't look it up, but that's something that'd be interesting to see, how many home teams lose in extra innings versus, away teams winning. I'd like to see the win-loss record on that, because I kind of feel like all the visiting team has to do is score that run. Not even 2, not even 3, just score that run. And all of a sudden there is a massive pressure on the home team, because then the home team comes out and you have to get that run home from second. Now you're pressing. Your at-bats are a little more tense. Everything just kind of dials up a little bit. The visiting pitching staff now has a cushion. They can make a mistake. They can attack the zone. They can do some different things. So I just always feel like, this sounds like sour grapes and all that stuff, but whatever. I always feel like the home team is at a disadvantage. When the Giants are on the road and we go to extras, I kind of feel good. I feel a little bit better, but when they're at home, I go, man, all that has to happen is that one run to score. And then, hell, if somebody hits a 2-run home run, like the Giants did yesterday in Encarnacion against the A's, hits a 2-run home run in extras, and all of a sudden, now all the pressure's on the A's. Now they got to score 2 runs all of a sudden, and they know they have to score 2 runs. So that's, I mean, it's, I don't know. Something's got to change. I don't know what can be done to give the home team an advantage other than you put 2 runners on for the home team. But with baseball, we always talk about it'd be nice to have a 10th inning where you don't get any free ghost runners. Let's just play one more and see what happens, because the games are so darn fast now.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the 10th inning, let's put a runner at first. All right.
Yes. This was our solution, which was go to the 10th and everyone starts normal baseball. Then maybe in the 11th, you add someone at first. And then maybe in the 12th, you add the guy at a second if you do want to do this. But, oh, man, there's an older adage in basketball. So basketball, you have if you're losing, and let's say that you're down 2 points. In basketball, you have the 3-pointer. And the old adage was, if you're on the road, you go for the win. And if you're at home, you go for the tie. And what you're saying is actually the opposite. You're like, hey, if we're the road team, we might as well play for extra innings, because then it's just like, for us, it's like free money. We're kind of supposed to lose this game because we're on the road anyways. And now if we go to extra innings, we kind of like our chances. It almost kind of takes out home field advantage to an extent.
Well, and like the college football overtime rules, the team that goes second has an advantage, because they get to see, what did the other team do? Oh, they only scored a field goal. Sweet. Now we got these plays that we can run. These are kind of our money plays, and let's try to get a touchdown out of this. Versus they didn't score at all, so all we have to do now is kick a field goal. Cool, conservative play. So just it's the opposite for baseball. I just feel like, I mean, if again the Giants scored 2 runs and then they solo home run by Conforto, and now all of a sudden the Giants are up 5-2. And then it just gets kind of, gets very, very difficult for the A's at that point, unless you have Brett Wisely at second base. And then it makes things a little bit easier, puts a little pressure on the Giants.
Or maybe you don't have Brett Wisely at second base anymore for right now, because
poor guy.
He did get sent down, and we'll go through some of the latest maneuverings that happened in Giants baseball. Not a whole lot that had happened, but we'll go over it. I think the one that makes me sad is Randy Rodriguez. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so we have these 2 games where if you win both of these 2 games, or if you split, you're kind of feeling good about yourself. And they went out and lost both of them, which had to be heartbreaking. I do wonder if you ask Bob Melvin, and if you give him some truth serum, what does he say about this season? Because he's been on some pretty darn good baseball teams. He also been on some pretty bad baseball teams. I think he was on the old 1985 Giants, who went out and lost 100 games. I think he was on that team. But then he was also,
I don't think he was up yet. I believe his rookie year was 86.
Okay, so maybe he did miss that. Maybe he did miss that team. But this has to be so frustrating for him. And look, he's added to some of the frustration, I know, for the fan base. There was a situation, I forget if this was the first or the second game, where Giants had a runner on second, and their best hitter, or their hottest hitter at this point, someone who's got over a 600 slugging, Tyler Fitzgerald, was up at the plate. Casey Schmidt was on second. And instead of trying to hit Schmidt in, the idea was to bunt Fitzgerald. And look, if Fitzgerald just lays the ball down normally, it's probably a good play. But this was the one instance in which it's a very poor bunt, and Casey Schmidt, I don't know if they're playing contact play there, but he reads it poorly, and he's out by a mile at third base. But fortunate for the Giants, they called runner's interference or whatever, so he had to go back to second. But it's just moments like that where, when the team is humming, Bob Melvin makes a play like that, and it's going to work. But when the team is struggling, Bob Melvin calls a play like that, and it's just the worst possible scenario happens.
Well, and everything's magnified because the team is not hitting right now. And that's what those types of plays are completely magnified. Because you're like, well, you don't think, hey, well, then tomorrow we'll just come back and we'll score 8 runs. It's not a big deal. No, this team is having a hard time scoring 3 runs. I mean, you gave the average, right? It's under 3. So this team is having a hard time scoring 3 runs, which is putting massive amount of pressure on the pitching staff and Bob Melvin, because Bob Melvin, speaking of the pitching staff, has to make the right moves every single damn time out of the bullpen, because there is no pickup. I mean, you make a move, guy gives up a run or two, and all of a sudden you're down 4-0 when you were down 2-0. That's kind of it. Kind of feels like that's the ball game. I mean, if the Giants go down 4-0 in the 7th inning, earlier in the year, I kind of felt like, hey, we had a little bit of a chance. We could hit some home runs, we could drive in some runs, but lately it's just paltry offense doing absolutely nothing. And it's hard to watch sometimes too, because you feel it. I mean, especially like against Chris Sale in that first game, they had runners at first and third. I go, oh, good, put some pressure, score a run,
because this guy's going to get on a run. You got to get to him.
Absolutely. And we say that all the time on the show. We say, and that's an old adage of baseball: score often, score early. You put the pressure and go to the bullpen.
Even when the teams were good, you're like, oh, like the Giants offense would be like, wait, Matt Cain's pitching. Okay, well, we scored 2 runs in the first. Like, we're done. Like, that's all we need. And sometimes, that's happened a few times this year with Webb. It's happened with Snell, where the offense is just almost as like, the guy that we have on the mound is going to shut him down. So the offense, for whatever reason, just dries up. It's just possible that they're bad, which is probably more probable than possible.
I think that's the most likely scenario. So keep going. I want to throw out the last 2 weeks offensive numbers.
Okay,
but I don't want to make you throw up. So if you finish what you're saying first, we'll get to that.
Well, I was going to ask you a question, because I came to this consensus as I was looking at the standing. I was like, you know what? After how poorly I felt about this baseball team, they're 4 games out of the wild card spot.
Yeah.
Now, I expect that the way that they are playing and the way that the pitching may end up going, we're very dependent on a guy coming back from crazy Tommy John surgery, which is not great. We're very dependent on young starting pitchers who have reached beyond their normal pitch limit and innings limit, and we're also relying on a couple of relievers who have dynamic arms but don't really pitch in these kinds of pressured situations. So that's my real worry about this pitching staff. But why does 4 games back of the wild card? Why does it feel like it's 10, or why does it feel like it's insurmountable? Like, I think there's an aspect where I go, okay, maybe they can kind of, play some good ball. They're playing the White Sox this week at home. They should sweep these guys. A good baseball team sweeps these guys. I'm not convinced that that's what's going to happen, but you would think, my optimism should be, well, we got to take care of this series and we can get right back in there. But instead, the feeling that I have is 4 is going to be 10, and 4 feels like 10 right now.
Yeah, and so I have a good analogy for that, because I kind of thought about that while I was driving on Friday. So I drive in the Sierras quite a bit, go over the pass on 80. Went to Wheatland to see a concert Friday night, drove back over 80 the next morning. I like to use cruise control. Adaptive cruise control is very, very nice in the Subarus. I set it, speed limit in the Sierras is 65. It's pretty windy. There's a lot of uphill, downhill. The Subarus, I set that sucker to 68 and it goes 68, and it loves the curves, and it stays really nice. If you've ever been driving in the Sierras, though, there's always those cars that you go downhill, that car flies past you. you start to go uphill, and I'm still going 68, both downhill and uphill. And then you pass that car as it starts to go back down because it's not maintaining its cruise control. It's an older car or whatever else. That's the Giants right now. And that's why it feels like 10 games, because you're going downhill, you're catching, and you're all of a sudden 2.5 games back in the standings. And then you start to go uphill, and then you see the other teams and you're like, oh, well, we're kind of not making. I guess it's the opposite, right? That would be the opposite. You're going uphill and you get to 2.5 games. Then you start going downhill and those other teams start flying past you. And that's kind of what the Giants, they're just stagnant. They don't have that killer instinct. They don't see those bad teams and just put the knife in them and twist. They don't do that. So that's why 4 games feels like 10 games, and it feels insurmountable, because anytime you make any kind of lunge towards that third wild card spot, you get yanked back. And so I think that's the frustrating thing with this team. And I told you, after they lost to the A's in the first game of the 2-game series, I said, I texted you, I said, man, they can win 4 or 5 in a row at this point, and I'm not going to feel like, okay, here we go, we're starting to get back in this, because I know is exactly what's going to happen. We're going to start going downhill, and that other teams are going to go flying right past us. And it happens all season long. And speaking of truth serum for Bob Melvin, I don't even think you need to give him truth serum. He's going to tell you it's a disappointing season. They had high hopes. He's going to be the first one to tell you, hey, man, we went into this season with high hopes of competing for a high wild card spot, maybe even the division, possibly. I mean, the Dodgers are a powerhouse. It just happens. But he's going to be the first to tell you that it's a disappointing season. I mean, if they make the playoffs, change all of that. But if they don't make the playoffs, that's the ultimate goal. It's a disappointing season.
Like it's like when Obama became president in 2008. Looking young, looking handsome. And
before I had kids.
After those 4 years of being the president, hair turns white. He's got more lines under his eyes, and it was like, oh man, that was a rough 4 years of running this thing.
Oh yeah.
And like, I just wonder if, like, if Bob Melvin was to like rank his seasons of like what seasons made him younger and what seasons made him older. I wonder where this one ranks.
This has got to be one of the absolutely, this season made me older. I mean, his press conferences, I love his post-game press conferences because he's surly as all hell. It's enjoyable. I like it.
Very honest.
and I will take that, because I loved Gabe Kapler, and he was honest for the most part. But there was so much, like we would like to call in the IT world, just techno babble in there. I mean, it was just, throwing out words and throwing out phrases, and you're like, okay, got it. But with Melvin, I kind of feel like, he's honest, and he'll hit you with the honesty, which is good. No, and they ask him a lot of good questions. I mean, if anything, the Bay Area, the San Francisco Giants writers are just phenomenal. The reporters are phenomenal. They don't back down. They ask the tough questions, which is good. And Giants managers are always, willing to answer them. So, which we appreciate as fans, because we want to know. I mean, if they didn't, there is no way I would stick around in games that have weird things that happen, close games. I wouldn't stick around for the post game on NBC Sports Bay Area or the radio to find out what's being said. If it was just all fluff and cotton candy, then I'd be like, you know what, game's over. I'm turning this off. I'm gonna go do something else. But,
there was a rough one yesterday with Encarnacion, because I think he was trying to speak English as much as he could, and he did a pretty good job of speaking English, but his interpreter was still helping him with the Spanish, and Sergio and Estes, they were trying to ask him questions, and I think he just was like, at some point, he was like, I just give up. Like, I'm happy, but
just smile.
I can't actually communicate the things that I'm trying to communicate, and so that's always a little awkward.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But all right, give me the sobering
Ugh.
numbers that you
Are
had
you
put
ready?
together. Yeah.
Are you ready? All right. Well, we'll start with the pitching staff because, again, best pitching staff in baseball.
So
We
this is
think
from
we
the
have.
moment Farhan made that quote.
Yeah, so Farhan said, we didn't make any changes because we believe we have the best pitching staff in baseball. So that's why he hung on to Snell. Since that time, they're technically like the 10th best pitching staff in baseball. Again, good enough if you have an offense that's scoring 4 runs a game, 5 runs a game, maybe. I mean, that if the Giants are scoring 4 or 5 runs a game, this team surges and is probably 10 games over 500 at this point. But because if you look at from that time, let's look at all the numbers that kind of make them the 10th. ERA 11th on the since then, a 3.75 ERA. The innings pitched 93 and 2/3. That's 11th. Okay, right around 10th. Then you get your FIP 3.91. That's 8th in the league since July 31st. Then you look at home runs per 9. That's 13th at 1.35. Then you look at wins, and wins is a kind of an antiquated stat, but it means your pitching staff is going. They're pitching well enough, probably quality starts for the most part to get you a win, and they're 9th in the league since then with 7 wins. Then you look at walks per 9, 20th in the league at 3.07 walks per 9. Ks per 9, phenomenal. 3rd in the league at 10.23 and or 10.28, and that's most having to do with Blake Snell.
Yeah.
But Robbie Ray has gotten his strikeouts. Logan Webb has got 7 or 8 a game. So he's getting the strikeouts as well. But the number one thing that tells you where this starting pitching staff is since July 31st is our favorite stat, and baseball's new favorite stat. I shouldn't say new, been using it for a few years. It helps determine who goes to the Hall of Fame too. I mean, they use this a lot, and that's WAR. So starting pitching staff WAR. Guess where they are? 10th.
Okay.
So I mean that's who they are. They're a 10th. Yeah. They're 10th overall pitching staff since July 31st. Not the best pitching staff in baseball. Absolutely not the worst. Not even an average pitching staff. I mean, they're better than an average pitching staff. But the reason the Giants are not surging is the offense. And in the last 2 weeks, I mean, major categories, they're not above 18th in the league. When you look at WRC plus, which is weighted runs creation plus, they're 25th in the league at 90. You look at walk percentage, 24th at 6.7%. They're not getting on base, and that tells you there with their on base percentage at 25th in the league at 0.289. I mean, 0.289 is an ugly number to be 25th in the league. The Giants are basically like 23rd or worst in the league in almost every offensive category. Runs scored is the only thing that they're up towards the middle, and we talked about that last week. They do score some runs, but if their offensive production was any better anywhere else, this could be a 4 or 5 run team, and they're scoring, they scored 50 runs. But that'll be, how that is. That's the breakout game where the Giants score 8 runs, they score 9 runs, they score 10 runs. And then they don't score anything for the next couple of games. But, if you look at K percentage, 23rd in the league in the last 2 weeks, average 27th, they're hitting 228. Slugging percentage, 22nd, they're hitting, slugging percentage 385. And their WOBA, 26th in the league at 294. So, those are just hideous numbers for a 2-week stretch. I was going to go back even further, but I thought, it's, beating a dead horse.
And here's the thing that makes it feel worse. Where is the future of the offense going to come from? Fitzgerald and Ramos can't get any hotter than they've been.
Right.
Ramos is already, kind of slowing down a little bit, though he's still hitting decent numbers. Is Fitzgerald going to slug 622 for the rest of this season? Like, that guy's been on a roll. So if those guys come a little bit back to the norm, where does the offense come from after that? That's the big worry for me. is you can't even ride these guys as hot streaks because nobody else will get hot. Patrick Bailey, the poor guy, has been playing way too much, and his batting average has taken a nosedive because of it. Like, you can tell this dude is just tired, and I think he even got scratched from today's lineup.
Well, and I think that's the problem too. Is like you said, nobody else. So look at the last 2 weeks. You've got Grant McCray is up there with a WRC plus of 208. Again, kid just came up and he's played in 4 games. Conforto, WRC plus of 171, but his slugging is 571 during that time. Tyler Fitzgerald slugging last 2 weeks 574. After that, you start to go Matt Chapman at 447, Elliot Ramos at 480, and then it just drops off to under 400 with Encarnacion at 395. Then you go down to Luciano, who got sent down. He was at 125. He only got 8 plate appearances during the last 2 weeks.
I feel
stretch.
so bad for that poor guy.
Yeah, and they couldn't play Wisely either, even though he played in 10 games. His slugging was 227. His batting average is 182. Lamont Wade Jr.'s batting average 133. I know you had some stuff to say about Lamont Wade Jr. over the weekend, too.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about a couple of those players that you mentioned. Matt Chapman has gone on record to say that he likes it here and that he would like to stick around, and that the Giants front office knows this about him. So that it's an interesting strategy, because he is basically talking as a player who's become, I wouldn't say he's beloved, but I think the Giants fan base really likes him.
I think so.
And he's basically saying, the front office knows how I feel. It is on them to get this deal done, which it should be. It should always be on the front office to get the deal done. We know that he struggled in trying to find that correct deal last year, which is why he was available for the Giants. So that is also part of his strategy, I'm sure, is, man, maybe the Giants will give me the deal that I couldn't get last year. Hopefully they love me enough. Hopefully the fan base puts some pressure on them. Hopefully, Farhan is so worried about his job and worrying about people signing long-term that he gives me that money. Do you what has your feeling been about the Matt Chapman experience so far? And do you think the Giants should break the bank to keep him?
I don't know about break the bank. And I don't even know, honestly, if you need to break the bank to keep Chapman. Because Chapman, I mean, he seems to me one of those guys, he likes his routine. I mean, you and I were on the field. We got to see him take grounders.
Yeah.
He at Oracle, Ron Wotus, Matt Williams, they were on the field with him, and then Bob Melvin talked to him for a brief moment. He's going to be 32 years old, probably in the middle of the season next year. Played in the Bay Area for 5 seasons, in Toronto for 2, back in the Bay Area. He just kind of seems like one of those creatures of habit. So I don't even know if you need to break the bank. He probably will opt out, because there's no harm in, there's no reason for the Giants to come right now and say, here's the contract. The season's not over. I mean, he could get hit in the face with a fastball tomorrow. Yeah. And you've extended him. So there's really no harm in that, other than now you've got other teams vying for his services as soon as he opts out. Then was it all lip service on Matt Chapman's part to say that, I'd like to stick around, let's get a deal done? Somebody who says that tells me that they are happy in their place, that they want to be there. That's not any kind of, like you said, that's not a great contract negotiation ploy. That's not going to get you points with your agent, I don't think.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because the whole problem with last year was they could not find the deal that they wanted, which allowed him to say. And so that, he's going to opt out. And by opting out, hopefully that means that, A, he and the Giants can come to an agreement, or B, there's another team out there for his sake, that sees the value. He has never had the opportunity for that big money. He was I think the last deal he signed in Toronto was, I don't know, it was like, I forget what I looked at it just recently. What was it? It was 2 for 25,
Okay.
and then he became a free agent to sign with the Giants, and his contract this year. So he's making 16, almost $17 million this year. And then if he was not going to opt out, then he would get bumped up to almost 18. So he really has not had that opportunity to take that big, that big long-term deal and really just, that 5 for 150. That was never available for him. And I'm sure that's what they thought they were going to have last year. So now, by him saying this, if the Giants go, okay, 4 for 100, does he take that?
You know, I could see him doing that. Again, that
By
would
the
put
way,
him at.
they may not even need to go 4 for 100.
They may not need to, and that would put him at 36 years old. So he'd still have time for another contract or two, short ones after that, if he wanted to continue to play. I mean, he's a healthy guy. The guy doesn't get hurt, man. I
Yeah.
mean, he's on the field. And that's the key. What are they, they say the best ability is availability. And so that's what Matt Chapman is. He's there. He's on the field. He's putting up the numbers. Yeah, I mean, he would be my number one target. I love Blake Snell, but again, pitchers always make me nervous. But I guess it depends on what Snell's looking for. If Snell's looking for like a 3-year deal, the astronomical numbers, I'm fine with that. I'd rather at this point with pitchers, I think I'd rather go short contracts with huge guaranteed numbers. I just don't like it. And you and I don't, we're getting a little tired of the 1-year opt-outs just because I mean, you want to sign somebody. And as a fan, you want to be like, Blake Snell is ours for 3 years, not, hey, Blake Snell signed a 3-year deal with the Giants, but he's gone after one.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. But, how many times are we going to do that before, the fans are like, can we just sign somebody for, 6-7 years? Garrett Cole is going to be out there next year. And again, pitching wise, I think I'm comfortable with like a 3 or 4 year deal at this point. It's because of the quick decline and so many injuries and everything. I mean, you saw Blake Snell go on the injured list twice this year with the same injury. So,
I mean, you just look at the Dodgers, and we haven't actually brought up the Dodgers a lot this year because things have not been in our favor of late. But Walker Buehler trying to come back, he's had to go back on the DL. Right. I saw Glasnow just had to go back on the DL. So Kershaw is now he's like their guy right now.
Yeah, he's back to being their ace, man. And they only have a 3-game lead over the Padres, and
the Padres are right
there.
The Diamondbacks are right there. It just you just like, man, if the Giants could just had one more bat, maybe they could be in this mix too. Mm-hmm. And that ultimately falls on Farhan to me. I know, there are some people who are just like anti-Farhan to the nth degree, and I'm not like that. I don't think you're like that either. No. Like, we understand how hard it is, but at some point, man, you have to pull the trigger, and he has not been able to pull the trigger on anything. People will point to the Chris Bryant trade. I guess that he was a talented guy,
but yeah, Chris Bryant wasn't Juan Soto.
No,
I mean that's the whole thing. He wasn't Juan Soto. He wasn't. Who was the big trade deadline player this year? God, I can't even.
There was not really one who
there really wasn't.
Louis Bob was probably the biggest name value from a younger player, but
honestly, the biggest name was Blake Snell.
Yeah,
when it came down to it, and it didn't go anywhere. So yeah.
So I do look at Matt Chapman and go, hey, if he's looking for, I don't know who gives him 4 for 100, because that's $25 million a year. He's never made more than this year, which is 16.6. So do you bump him up to do you need to bump him up to 25? I guess I just don't know. Maybe there's a team out there who needs some stability on the left side of the infield, and they look at him and they go, yeah, we'll make that deal. But I think the fact of the matter is, if you're Matt Chapman and you go through the ranks and you're in Oakland, and all of a sudden you're just like, this guy who's going to make so much money once you finally hit free agency, and then you have a bad season in Toronto, hit free agency, and that money is not there.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, what, 4 for 88 maybe? I mean, 22 is good. 22 is good. And then you're going to have some other team come in and then maybe the Giants do have to bump it up at that point. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he really hasn't had the big contract. So Farhan could come in 4 years, 88 million, and he goes, there's 22 million a year to stick with us. Cuz I mean, honestly, he gets people to watch. Hey, as a baseball fan, you and I, we love defense. I mean, defense is it's fantastic, especially if you have ground ball pitchers.
Just watching him is
Oh, he's a
phenomenal.
professional. He's a professional baseball player. He brings a lot to the team. He brings a lot to the clubhouse. So he's worth the money. That's the thing. I mean, he's not a guy that you're throwing money at and going, I wonder how he is in the clubhouse. I wonder what his glove is going to be like. Maybe he can be a decent enough fielder and this and that. No, you know what you're getting. I mean, you're getting a high WAR guy, and you're getting a high WAR guy because of the glove.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's an excellent defender, and he's a 250 hitter with 20 bombs. That you got to be able to live with that in order to pay him that money.
I will take that at third base any day. I mean, yeah, it's not Matt Williams, but a Matt Williams doesn't come along all the time. You know what I mean? So to get a Matt Chapman,
is he a Pedro Feliz?
I hope not. I hope he's not a Pete Happy.
I was thinking of guys who had to try and come in and play that position. David Bell, Pedro Feliz.
What was it? Bill Miller,
Pablo.
Didn't we have Charlie Hayes, right?
Charlie Hayes.
Now we're going way back. Eesh. Yeah, there were we had a lot of different third basemen that tried to, do the job. But so that's why you get a third baseman, because your other option right now is Casey Schmidt. I mean, Casey Schmidt is having a hard time hitting out of a paper bag. So
I mean, I think Casey Schmidt ultimately could be a good backup infielder.
Sure,
but he doesn't hit well enough to take anybody's position at this point.
No, not at all.
So you mentioned Lamont Wade,
and
I came to that realization this weekend that no matter the high on base percentage that he does have, you mentioned it earlier, no availability. He's often hurt. I think they need to make a move. I don't think he can be their first baseman. I know Pete Alonso is out there, for free agency. He's a possibility. I don't know if he's a guy that the Giants have on their mind, especially in this park. I don't know if he's even he's probably crossed us off the list already. But
yeah,
you go from the one season, was it 3 seasons ago, where the Giants lead all of baseball with home runs coming from the first base position with 48 home runs that season, to now they got to be near the bottom because they don't have any home runs coming from that position. And that is a position where you can hide deficient defensive players if they are giving you really good offensive numbers. And I get it. A lot of people like the on-base percentage, but Lamont Wade can't sit in a lineup. He doesn't hit for power. I think this situation of him being the everyday first baseman has got to be done this year. We can't have this next year. Wilmer's back on the DL. He's probably done for the season. He was a great pickup for like a backup, a right-handed bat. But when you rely on guys like that, there is the risk of the injuries and them not having these career years at the same time. And that's what we have this year, which is just bad first base play and no offense coming from that position. And Lamont Wade's still hitting like in the second hole because he does get on base.
Yeah,
he's gonna have like one of the worst run batted in statistics of all people who hit high in the order. It's just really bad. And I he seems like a Farhani kind of guy, but I just cannot. I don't know if I can do it next year with him in that spot. I think they need to bring someone in. Hopefully, they could adjust some of the guys coming up. Like maybe like give Luciano a first baseman's glove. Like let's see if he can actually take some ground balls there. At least we can attempt to get his bat in the lineup. So
yeah, I mean, if he can catch, that's the main thing. I mean, if he can catch, and we don't know. I mean, he has a hard time with ground balls, but if he can catch a throw to first base, I'd say, hey, put a warm body there at this point. But
I mean, get him at bats at any way that you can. Get him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, consistent at bats too, and that's going to be the problem. Is going into next season, what do you do with Luciano? I mean, that's a whole separate thing. But Lamont Wade Jr. is due. He's due for his third arbitration year next year, and then he's an unrestricted free agent in 2026. So next year he's under control. The Giants could arb him, and then they can trade him, but they have to have another option at first base. If I told, would you believe me if I told you he's having his highest OPS plus season of his career right now?
I would, because the statistics are lying to us. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. And but this is only 86 games. Again, like you said, you can't keep the guy on the field is the problem. And I love him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of my favorite players on the Giants. When he comes up to bat, he's one of those at bats that I got to watch, because I love to watch him control the strike zone. It's an enjoyable at bat. It is frustrating because the power just isn't there. He had 17 home runs last year, played in 135 games, 18 home runs in 2021, but he only played in 109 games there. And then in 2022, he only played in 77 games. And this year so far, 86. And it's his highest OPS plus season of his career. And that's where you have to look at those OPS plus numbers and say, yeah, but my eyes are saying something completely different.
Well, and here's the thing. Look, if Lamont is a backup outfielder, a fourth outfielder, a fifth outfielder, a backup, a left-handed DH, and they play this game with all the options of guys who just to keep him around, I think I'm okay with that. The problem is he's a starting first baseman. That is the problem.
Right. That's a power position.
Yeah, it's a position where you want to get offense, and you're not getting the type of run production. Now, then you look at his WRC plus, and it's like 125. It's like higher than his average, and I'm like, this is where I'm wondering how, if these statistics make as much sense or show as much value as they make sense. But yeah, that's a tough one for me, and I know that there are a lot of the analytics folks who probably think it's like, yeah, he's cheap, so you absolutely keep him around. I'm okay with that, but we have a lot of guys like that. You want some stability, you want some consistency. To have a Yaz and to have a Lamont Wade, it's almost like, if you have so many possibilities of starting players, you don't really have starting players. So that is more my problem with Lamont.
Well, and with Lamont Wade Jr. too, you say, well, he can play right field. Do we have a fourth outfielder next season in Lamont Wade Jr.? But you're going to have Jung-Hoo Lee, you're going to have Ramos, you're going to have Yaz, and then you're going to have Matos is probably your fourth at that point, because Conforto is going to be gone. So yeah, what do you do? And going back to the OPS plus numbers, it's his highest of his career this season, but our fan favorite and your favorite, Brandon Belt, had 6 seasons with a higher OPS plus than Lamont Wade Jr. has right now. So that tells you right there, yeah, he's got a high OPS plus, and you go, oh, that's great. Look at that. It's the highest of his career, but it's like, yeah, but Brandon Belt had 6 of those career seasons higher than this year.
We got to figure out. We got to figure out what Brandon Belt did to Farhan.
I don't know, man.
Did he accidentally step on like Farhan's cat in the dughouse or something?
Well, and I thought too, I go, well, maybe it's because he had a hard time staying on the field also. But I mean, So does Lamont Wade Jr. But that's the thing is Lamont Wade Jr. is what, 3 million this
Yeah,
year?
true. And Brandon
So
was going to be 20.
3.5. Yeah, exactly. So that's where you have to look and say, well, we can't afford to have Brandon Belt back. Now they could afford to extend to Brandon Belt next season a minor league deal with a chance to make the team out of spring training. I mean, you could certainly do that. He's going to be what, 30s? Well, he's probably going to be 37 years old.
This
During
brother
the
didn't
season,
even
so.
play this year, though.
Yeah, I know, and that's. I mean, he's probably retired.
Yeah,
so,
I would think so.
So yeah, let's put that to rest. I'm sorry I brought it up.
No, I mean, I like it. I I would have
Yeah.
preferred
This
him
season,
to get another shot because I thought he played
yeah.
okay in Toronto last year.
Mhm.
I would have loved to see him come back, but going back to
He
what you
did.
said, which is why he didn't, is it's 3 point. It's $1.5 million versus somebody who's going to cost you 10 times that in order to
Right,
get another team.
and his OPS plus last season was higher than Lamont Wade Jr.'s is this season. So that
Yeah.
was one of the 6 seasons. Was even last year in his final
Yeah.
season, he had a higher OPS plus. But yeah.
Okay. Did you have? I saw a lot of really sad posts and sad articles on the last time the Giants play the A's in the Oakland Coliseum. Did you have any romanticism about that ballpark?
I did, but it had nothing to do with the Giants. That's the whole thing is in high school, okay, I'm an old guy. So I started high school in 87, right? And then I graduated. That was my freshman year, 87, 88, and then sophomore 88, 89, then 89, 90, 90, 91. So I graduated in 91, started the, fall of 87. When the Giants were out of town, living in the South Bay, we would drive because I had a couple buddies who were big A's fans. We would drive to the Fremont BART station, hop on the BART, cruise over to the stadium, and then get off and go hang out, watch Ricky and the guys do their thing. So and I was a big AL guy. Huge Giants fan, so I hated all the National League teams, but I loved the Royals. I loved to watch George Brett, and then Boggs would come in with the Red Sox, and Darrell Evans would come in with the Tigers. So all these teams, got to see them come in. Ken Griffey Jr. later. So those are my memories of paying the, what is it, $2-3 to sit in the wooden bleachers in the outfield and watch the other teams play, because you got to see the superstars of the time. And those are, we're talking Hall of Famers. All these guys are Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And of course, there were a lot of home runs hit. We're talking 87 to 91. This was live ball era, so that we saw a lot of home runs hit. And when the Indians would come into town, also, you get all those two: Carlos Baerga,
Joey Bell, Albert Bell,
and then Sandy Alomar Jr. played for them too. A lot of fun. Glenn Allen Hill. Before he was a Giant, I think it was. So those are my memories of the Oakland Coliseum since they built Mount Davis.
Yeah,
I think when I was with KSJS, I went to one preseason game, the Raiders against the Bucks, probably 1997, 98. And it did, it was just like, oh, this is fun. I'm in the press box watching the preseason football game. And I don't think I ever went to an A's game since they built Mount Davis. And to me, the Giants-A's rivalry, I don't know, people may slag me for this, but it just kind of feels manufactured. It came from the World Series, which I totally understand. The World Series was, contentious, but then it was interrupted by the earthquake, and baseball was kind of put on the back burner. Then we got swept, and it was kind of like it didn't seem real. The whole thing didn't seem real, like it really happened. And then after that, when was it 97 when they introduced interleague play, and then they go, the Giants and A's are now rivals. They played 4 games against each other, prior to all of this. So there's no big rivalry other than you just happen to be across the Bay Bridge from each other. You have totally different audiences. You have totally different regions. There's a million people in each place, so you've got your own fan base. Not that big of a deal. I think more than anything, it was the A's fans hated the Giants because of what they did to their, broadcast rights.
Mhm.
The Giants stopped them from going to the South Bay because
Yeah.
they said, no, that's our area. You can't go down there. So more than anything, I've talked to A's fans over the year, and God, they hate the Giants. They hate Giants fans. And it's like, even though they swept us in the World Series, I don't hate the A's. They're fine. They don't bother me at all. So to me, that whole rivalry thing, it just was never my gig. So
Yeah, there were points in which I rooted for the A's to not do so well, but over the years, I was like, I don't care if they
yeah,
win. Like, I hope that they win. It's better
yeah,
for the fans of them. We all have friends who are also A's fans, and so I was
yeah,
like happy for
absolutely.
them. Like when they would get to the playoffs or whatever. I have two main memories. I did not like that ballpark for one. Even
Right.
even before Mount Davis, when we were in junior high school, we were able to go on a field trip to an A's game, and I was just like, "Why are we going to the A's? Like, why aren't we going to Candlestick Park? This is ridiculous." And like you said, I'm sure it was because we got like $2 or $3 tickets.
Yeah, yeah.
But I have two distinct memories. One is my cousin somehow, and I'm sure this was through like mischievous things, he would get tickets every once and again to go see the A's. And so one night, it was during the summer sometime, we go and see Dave Stewart against Roger Clemens. It's a night game. I remember that much. It was a night game. And it's like, oh wow, Clemens and Stewart, this is really cool. Roger Clemens shit the bed so hard. I was like, this sucks, man. Dave Stewart is being Stewart, 8 innings, 3
Oh yeah,
runs,
just
like just
dealing at
consistent
home where he
at home.
dealt the
Yeah,
best. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And Clemens just looking like terrible. So I remember that. Now I also remember us getting moved a couple of different times because the seats that we had were again, probably some mischievousness going on with those tickets. But the last memory that I have, and I've mentioned I've mentioned on this show before. So I've been to the Oakland Coliseum, I would say 3 times since I was a little kid. So I went once with some friends in 2012, maybe for my birthday. Giants A's. We got to see the Giants. I think the A's did win that game. And then another friend had a birthday party during another Giants versus A's thing. We sat in the bleachers. And then the last time I was at the Oakland Coliseum for a baseball game was we were invited to Dave Caval's
Mm.
suite. And so I got to talk to him a little bit. And now Dave Caval to A's fans is like they have his face on like wanted posters because they hate him so
Yeah.
much.
Oh yeah.
So this is before all of that stuff was really happening. And we're just there hanging out. And I'm just kind of like, I'm less interested in what's going on the field. I think it was Tigers A's. And I'm just more interested in him because I was like, is this guy real or is he just a phony car salesman? Because he felt like a phony car salesman. And so I was just like asking him questions like, what do you think about this? Like trying to gauge his baseball knowledge. And he passed the test. He was okay with
Yeah.
baseball knowledge. But I did flex in front of him because the conversation went to the 70s Oakland A's teams.
Mm.
And they were talking about, those great teams of the 70s. And then the topic came to the owner, Charles Finley. And so I started mentioning to them, I was like, oh, yeah, like, do you guys know the MC Hammer story? This was just a group of people who were in the suite with us. And Dave Caval's like, oh, yeah, that's a good story. And I was like, you can tell it. Like, I don't have to tell,
Oh no.
And he was like, no, you're good. Go ahead and tell it. I was like, okay, I'll tell the story.
No.
So, the story is that basically Stanley Burrell was the owner's he didn't live. The owner did not live in the Bay Area, so when they had home games, he would have a young Stanley Burrell call him and basically tell him everything that happened. The players themselves would use a young Stanley Burrell to sell their players' tickets, which they received, and if they didn't use them, it was a way for them to make extra money. So young, handsome, kid who can dance a little bit is out there selling the tickets for the players, and I'm sure they cut him in on some.
Oh yeah.
And basically they gave him, I don't know which Oakland A's player at the time, but he got the nickname of Hammer because they thought he looked like Hank Aaron. So MC Hammer comes out of Stanley Burrell he's like a bat boy, but he's kind of more than a bat boy because he is the liaison from the team to the owner at the same time. So
nice.
I told that story to the audience that Dave Cavall had at the thing, and so I got to flex for him a little bit just so he knew that I knew what I was talking about. So.
Yeah, right.
But that was the last time. Yeah,
is he a Bay Area guy?
Cavall?
Yeah,
I think Cavall. I don't know where he's from, but I know he was also like president of the Earthquakes, I believe. The Sounds like
right.
Earthquake.
Yeah.
So I think that's where he came from. But then soon thereafter, when I'm kind of singing the praises of this guy, he's a nice guy. Yeah, a little car salesman-y, but still kind of a nice guy. Then he shows up in Las Vegas at the Golden Knights game while the A's are playing as well. And I'm like, this guy's sleazy as all hell.
Yeah. Well, see, he was born in 1975 in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then, that guy. He's just a kid, man. He's only 48. So, he founded the GBL, the Golden Baseball League.
Oh, wow. There you go.
And Golden Baseball League, they used to have a team in Chico called the Chico Heat.
Oh, wow.
2005, Ricky Henderson signed a contract to play the 2005 season with I don't know if you remember, the San Diego Surf Dogs.
Yes.
So he played for them. Golden Baseball League was fun. I want to say Reno had a team. They did, yeah. So they reincarnated the Reno Silver Sox. We played at Piccoli Park during that time. I went to probably 3 or 4 games, and I used to have a Silver Sox T-shirts, and I had a Silver Sox hat. I was into it, man, because I was like, oh, cool, we have a baseball team here. And the kids weren't born yet, so I had free time, and I had money, Garrett. Because I didn't have kids. So I was like, let's go do fun stuff. So, yeah.
So last thing, which you kind of alluded to a little bit, in that the Giants played the White Sox, who are the dirt worst baseball team. One of the worst teams in the history of baseball.
Yeah.
Giants play a 3-gamer. They really need to win all of these games. Like, it's just kind of one of those things. And we are recording right before the first pitch of game 1.
You got to drive uphill, right? That's the whole thing right now. Now it's time to drive uphill and pass the bad teams, the bad cars.
And so they then play Seattle, who is in the hunt themselves in the American League. And look, they're playing fine baseball. But they are not juggernauts in any way. So it's not like going into Seattle, Seattle's actually a pretty decent home team. But it's not like going into Seattle means you're playing, the 2000 and what was the really good Yankees team in the early 2000s? So whatever that team was, it's not like that's who Seattle is. So the Giants really need to start taking care of some business. And the reason I say that is because then they play the Brewers in Milwaukee, and that thing scares me to death, even though the Brewers did lose Yelich for the season.
Yeah, they're
still a
really good
really,
team.
really, really good baseball team.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, like, I worry that the Brewers are like, oh, yay, Giants, you kind of beat the pants off of the terrible White Sox. Well, we'll show you what a good baseball team is like. So can we just like take care of it? Can we win 5 out of the 6 games this week and really put some pressure on some of these other teams? Because if they don't, then you go into Milwaukee and you probably get slapped around, and it's It's not great. So
Yeah.
that is my hope. But even like you said, you beat Chicago, you're kind of supposed to beat them. So no
Yeah.
big shakes there. You're supposed to beat those guys, and so they just need to take care of business, and they are not a take care of business baseball team. So that's what I'm worried about.
That's the frustrating thing. And I mean, we look at it and we go, the Giants should sweep the White Sox. But here's the thing. I mean, the White Sox won a game against the Yankees. So more than likely the Giants are going to win the series and win 2 out of 3. But when you're a 500 ball club, 2 out of 3 against a bad team just means you're a game over 500 at that point. So it's a bit frustrating to sit there and watch that. Now this point in the season, you can afford to lose a series to the Braves if you're beating all the other teams that you should beat. If you go into Oakland and win both of those games of the series, and then you win 2 out of 3 against the White Sox, and you win 2 out of 3 against the Mariners, you can afford to have a stumble and lose those 2 close games against the Braves because they're a good team and they're
Yeah.
ahead of you in the standings. The Giants just aren't there, man. Again, that killer instinct, I don't see it yet. I don't see, Giants have the bases loaded. They have the winning run at third, or they can crack the game open. They're up by a run. They're up 3-2 in the eighth with the bases loaded.
You mean Grant McRae hits a leadoff double, and 3 outs later he never leaves second base?
Yeah, even though he could have stolen third and stolen home on his own, just is it going to come to that? So yeah, that's that killer instinct just isn't there, and until we see it, I just keep thinking this is that club that just kind of is stagnant and is going to be a 500 club. And I feel bad for the pitching staff at this point because you're wasting kind of a really, really good season from a lot of starting pitchers.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the last week of transactions. So you mentioned this Grant McRae up. Unfortunately, Luciano goes back down. He never got an opportunity. Farhan kind of lied to us, by the way. He said that they traded Solares to open up some ABs for Luciano. That was absolutely not the case.
Yeah, no, it didn't happen.
Randy Rodriguez, who's been a very, very, very important reliever for the Giants. He is on the 15-day. He's got some flexor tendon stuff going on with his elbow. Spencer Bivens is back up. Ethan Small was activated from the 60-day, and he is in Sacramento. So that's a possibility for an arm, a relief arm for the Giants. And poor Wilmer.
Yeah.
Wilmer went from the 10-day injured list to the 60-day old injured list. And he's done for the season. And just today, before today's game, which by the time people listen to this, that game will already be over. I'm crossing my fingers for a W. Tyro Strada is activated, so he is back. And Brett Wisely goes back to Sacramento. So there you go. That is what's happening in Giants baseball.
It's good to have Tyro back because, again, I mean, when you look at all the metrics, man, he was, Gold Glove caliber second base. So that's nice to have that defense back.
All right, we do have one more question that we got to answer before we get out of here. Are you guys on board that 6 years is enough of, now this is in the words of Haruku and not the words of Thompson and Clark. He calls him Farhan. What are your thoughts of this? Like, if the Giants miss the playoffs, which I think is where Haruki is going, the Farhan regime, are you done with it, or does it get another opportunity?
I've said it tongue in cheek, and I'm almost starting to believe it now that I kind of feel like the Johnsons and the Johnsons are going to run this experiment, this program, the Farhan experiment into the ground to the point where when he gets fired, not after this season, but another 2 seasons or so, when he gets fired, no matter who they hire Giants fans are going to be so hungry for a winning organization that they're going to take whoever it is and lift that guy on their shoulders or gal on their shoulders and just, start cheering and going nuts. And there's going to be renewed invigoration. So, but no, I mean, I kind of like what's happening with the minor league system. But that's it, and I think we've talked before, and again, going back to the Rams days, I don't know if anybody's going to get this whole thing, but when Mike Martz took over as the head coach, everybody after a couple seasons, everybody goes, "Can we just make him an offensive coordinator again, and then get a new head coach because he's killing us as a head coach?" But I mean, once you elevate somebody like Farhan to head of baseball operations, you can't then drop him down to a minor league head of player development unless he goes to another organization, because that's where I think he excels. I think he excels in player organization and development and running the minor league system. Yeah, his drafts haven't been that fantastic, but we're starting to see all these guys come up and make a dent in the in the Giants organization, and you're starting to see like Bailey and Ramos and Birdsong and Harrison, and we're excited about all of this. And
Wizen Hunt I think he's pitching in San Jose right now. So
Tyler Fitzgerald too.
Up.
I mean, all these guys. So I'm fine with him hanging on another year. But after that year, if things are still the same, I might start calling him Farhan. So we might get to that point.
I think he'll fulfill his contract. I think they'll let him get to the end of it, and then it's really like I don't think they're like, and this is what I would have to do more research on, like who is out there, who do you poach, like what system do you want to duplicate? Are you trying to get more Dodgers folks from their front office? Because
that's what they did. They went and got a Dodgers personnel person and elevated him and tried to emulate the same thing. Problem is, you go out and try to get a Shohei, you try to get a Yamamoto, you just don't have I mean, if you would have gotten Judge, maybe at that point now it's like Shohei's like, yeah, I want to play with Judge in the Bay Area in San Francisco. That'd be fantastic. But you just don't have that. So.
Yeah, but you got Putila from the Astros organization. So, you're bringing in folks who are coming from smart orgs, but what is where do you go next? Who is the person who you're looking to grab? Who's the hot prospect of the front office? Who's the next, kind of person who you bring in?
But that's the thing. You got to look around the league and say, who's winning consistently? Well, I mean, the Rangers won the World Series, but they're not doing a whole lot this season.
Mm-hmm.
The Astros had a nice run. So like you said, we went out and got Putila. Other than that, you look around and you go, well, the teams that are hot right now, the Guardians, do you get somebody from the Guardians? I mean, you could have had Stephen Vogt.
Yeah, who's number 2 in the Phillies organization right now?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Maybe you go to the Phillies organization, but they're also the Phillies. What the Phillies do is go out and get free agents,
Trey Turner and Bryce,
and then when you're winning, you can breed
Zach
that.
Wheeler.
You can say, we have Bryce Harper, we have Zach Wheeler, we have this, we have that. We have Schwarber. Come play with us. But the Giants go, hey, we got Yaz. We got Lamont Wade Jr. And then Judge goes, I'm good. Go back to New York.
Judge called Juan Soto the best hitter of all time or something like that recently.
And see, Juan Soto's probably he's going to stay with the Yankees, man. He's going to stay with the Yankees.
I think so too. All right, that'll be it. We'll be back next week, hopefully in a better mood than we were this week. But the reality is, I don't know how you can be. I don't know how Giants fans can be happy with 500 baseball after what we've been through and what we were promised. And not, I say promised. It's more of like, when your parents tell you that they're going to get you, they don't have to tell you that they promise. They just say, "Oh yeah, we're going to go get this puppy," and to you, it's like a promise, And that
you don't realize it's 5 years from now.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, so hopefully next week we'll have a much happier discussion. But for Brad, I am Double G. See you when we see you. Peace out.
Peace.